After being released from prison, a white supremacist by the name of Michael Kent was assigned to probation officer Tiffany Whittier, who is a black woman. Despite Mr. Kent's hatefulness, Officer Whittier established what can only be described as a therapeutic relationship with him.
I saw his tattoos, the hate tattoos, but I didn't judge. I just knew I had to go out and work with this person.
And this relationship completely transformed his life. He's no longer a white supremacist. He's no longer violent. He had a swastika tattoo removed. And he's an outspoken advocate and shining example of life after hate. So what was the psychology behind this transformation? What did Officer Whittier do, and how did she approach Mr. Kent to be able to facilitate such a dramatic change? The short answer is that she saw the good in him. She accepted him, forgiving who he was and celebrating who he could become. She recognized in him what psychologists call the actualizing tendency, defined as an underlying flow of movement throughout life toward constructive fulfillment of one's inherent possibilities. In other words, it's the idea that growth is natural and ongoing. Legendary psychologist and therapist Carl Rogers described what Officer Whittier exemplified so beautifully as unconditional positive regard, which is basically a 10-syllable version of the word love. Carl Rogers developed a form of therapy known as person-centered therapy. The person-centered approach to therapy is based on the central belief that individuals have within themselves vast resources for self-understanding and for altering their self-concepts, basic attitudes, and self-directed behavior. And these resources can be tapped if a definable climate of facilitative psychological attitudes can be provided. Unconditional positive regard is one of these facilitative psychological attitudes. It's an attitude of accepting the person, caring for them, and prizing them, no matter what. It's a commitment to withhold judgment and uphold respect for the person. And it facilitates the person's ability to access their own inner resources for change and growth. Officer Tiffany Whittier didn't change Michael Kent, but she connected with him in a way that inspired and empowered him to change himself.
You opened my eyes to a lot of things. You let me know there is a lot of beauty in this world beyond color, beyond anything. You know, because you showed me more love than I got from my own race, my own culture.
Yeah.
Carl Rogers pointed out that unconditional positive regard creates a growth-promoting climate, and that it applies whether we are speaking of the relationship between a therapist and a client, parent and child, leader and group, teacher and student, or in any situation in which the development of the person is the goal. Now, the difficult question is, how can you maintain unconditional positive regard for a person whose actions have been deplorable? In the work I do professionally, I have the opportunity to support the growth of people who have done some of the most heinous things you can imagine. My capacity for unconditional positive regard is really challenged. There are two things, and perhaps you'll find opportunities to apply these in your life, in the relationships where you have the opportunity to support someone's growth. The first is to remind yourself that this attitude of unconditional acceptance, care, and respect is necessary if you are actually going to help the individual evolve. And the second way, which is most important, is that we have to be able to distinguish the person from the behavior. You can condemn the action and condone the person. The more you understand the person, the more their behavior begins to make sense to you, and the easier it becomes to forgive and accept. We can take full account of the person's past when deciding on how trustworthy they are. And we can also take full account of their best possible potential future when deciding how worthy they are of love and acceptance. Are some people too far gone? Too immoral to accept? Maybe. Is it your job to connect with everyone in a way that supports their growth? Not necessarily. Should you prioritize your own safety when interacting with people who have a mean or violent past? Definitely. Officer Whittier said she had her hand on her gun the first time she went to Michael Kent's house. Can people change and grow? Yes. And this is brought about most effectively by the change facilitating power of unconditional positive regard.
You have to forgive yourself. I forgive you.